Proceed with the examination, Counsel.
Mr. Justice? Mr. Justice?
Yes.
Through your permission, it has been brought to our attention that members of the media have been requested to conduct interviews by parties to these proceedings. We request that an announcement or pronouncement should be made to all the parties in these proceedings that it has been resolved that media statements are not permitted unless agreed to by the parties.
Come again, I don't quite follow the request.
We have been informed by members of the media that some of the family members who are party to these proceedings have been requesting to make public statements through interviews. So what I want to bring to the attention of Mr. Justice is that this morning it has been decided that such process has to be done in accordance with the terms of reference. It appears that some of the family members have not been informed of the decision which was reached this morning. If it can be announced in this gathering so that there should not be any confusion of what is expected of the parties.
Yeah, isn't that counsel's duty to tell their respective clients about the terms of the arbitration agreement?
Justice, we assumed that the respective legal representatives has disseminated the very decision which has been taken this morning. But having been approached, it appears quite apparent that that information has not been transmitted to the relevant clients.
No, you have to be more specific. Having been approached, it appears we'll have to be tighter. I don't intend to make any order. Parties have an agreement, and parties must fulfill the agreement. And each of the parties has a duty to tell those that they represent to act in accordance with the terms of the agreement. And that is what we concluded this morning, isn't it? I don't want to come towering from the top and say what counsel properly should be saying to their clients, or to go over the heads of the clients and tell them the agreement is there, the agreement requires the party to give each other notice if they intend to make press statements about the proceedings, not about the headache and not about what they had for breakfast, about the proceedings. So all I can say, repeat again, counsel, tell your clients what the agreement says. And two, if there are any breaches, they must be specific. At this time, at this place, that client, so that your opposite number can deal with that. Do you want to say anything else before I ask the rest of the counsel?
Well, I cannot add except to say that members of the ENCA media group
yes,
have approached me with regard to that information.
With regard to an interview?
Yes.
They wanted an interview from you, counsel?
From members of the family who are subject.
Yes, then they must approach counsel who are acting on behalf of those members. I think it's only appropriate that they approach the lawyers. But I don't want to be embroiled in that. There's an agreement. We've talked about it this morning. Every one of you knows what your responsibilities are, and let's live by those responsibilities.
Thank you, Justice.
In many ways, this matter is, if you like, amongst the parties sub judice. But the court cannot, or I cannot, did I say court? Sorry. The ADR process cannot regulate the conduct of people other than the parties. We can't tell anybody other than the parties what they should be saying or not saying. And parties are represented before me. And those are the counsel and attorneys know their duties, and they must do that. Let me start with each of the parties. Anything you want to say to what has just been said now? Would you want to put your name on record that you knew the new representative for Legal Aid South Africa? Would you set out your full names?
Thank you. My name is Nzame, surname Skibi. I'm appearing for Legal Aid South Africa.
Yes, Mr. Skibi.
Yes.
Anything you want to say about what has just been said by counsel for the state?
I can just clearly state that from my office, or from our office, I should say, our communication department, we've communicated that there is no media statement. Our clients, because when we entered the room this morning, then we are about to start. We've informed some of them, but perhaps others, they didn't get the message. But we undertake that we're going to relate the message to them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Advocate Hassan.
Thank you, Justice Masaneke. I did say earlier on this topic, and I'd like to repeat that we are trying to be scrupulous in respecting the integrity of this process. And to the extent that there's any suggestion that we are not complying, I must correct that. Immediately after we clarified this issue this morning, I advised my attorneys. They understood in great detail and with great caution, and they fully understood it and have already prepared a statement to put out, explaining that not just to our clients, but to the media. So we've advised our clients and we've advised the media about the terms of the agreement. To the extent that there's been some approach by some unknown party about some unknown person, I cannot comment.
Very well.
Thank you. Thank you, Justice Masaneke. We accept to confirm what has been said already. We have nothing else to add on.
Yeah.
We have nothing else to add. Thank you, Justice.
Advocate Utamo.
Well,
you've heard your colleagues' responses.
Yes.
Are those adequate?
Indeed.
Okay. Shall we get on with it then? Counsel, please proceed.
Thank you, Justice Masaneke. Mr. Masanoge, let's go back to the bundle we had been dealing with. That is 8 on page. This is another minute on page 2770. Are you there?
Yes.
Yes. That is on this. It's also another minute. I think this is during your time as well. That's why I'm referring you to this as well. The date for that minute, it's 8 April 2016.
Yes.
The first item there, you will recall in your testimony earlier on in relation to the marathon project.
Yes.
You had indicated something that the marathon project came after the patients were moved and so on, and yet the project and the report is titled the marathon project. What did you mean by that?
The term marathon, the way it was used by the Directorate Mental Health Unit, meant the going around to the team of mental health unit and their support staff going around to the NGOs and checking on where they have placed patients to check whether everything is okay. So that's my understanding of the marathon part of the project.
And the reference there to NGO marathon and verification of NGOs must be done by end of April 2016.
Yes. Yeah,
So-
that's what this inspection by the team was going to do.
That is, you must verify the NGO by the end of April 2016.
Yeah, in terms of this minute, that's
And
what.
these are the NGOs whose licenses have already been issued out by the 1st of April.
I presume so.
Okay. Then further down, there's a block. I think from there it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It starts with users from LE may be transferred to NGO, and doctors will follow them at NGO to assess them and replace them to the relevant facility if there is a need. Do you see that?
Yes.
I think my reading there, I get a sense that, in fact, the clear reading of that passage is that, one, there is a resolution, as it's titled at the top there, for the MEC meeting with senior management on LE contract relationship termination. So that is a resolution.
Of that meeting.
Of that meeting.
It was the MEC's meeting with senior managers, not only the project manager.
Exactly.
Project team.
So there was a conscious decision that users must be moved from LE to be transferred to NGOs. That is first.
Yes.
And after this shall have happened, then the doctors will follow them at NGO to assess them. Then three,
Okay. Okay.
and replace them to the relevant facility if there is a need. So there is a conscious decision, one, to remove them. Whether you refer to it as a discharge or transfer, as it was debated with you earlier on, that decision has been made. Then two, there's no assessment. Then three, the assessment will follow after they shall have been moved. Then four, they are not taken to the relevant facility that will cater for their specific need. But that decision will be taken once they are on the receiving institution.
Counsel, this was the MEC's meeting, as I said, with senior managers. It meant all the managers relevant to the district managers and all the other relevant managers.
Yes.
So when I read this sentence, I just want to read it. My understanding of the sentence, the way it is written,
Yes.
it was saying that because the placement of patient to NGOs was already, it had already commenced.
True.
Yes. So it was saying that when they are transferred to the NGOs, and the doctors will follow them also to their respective NGOs.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that they were not checked by doctors where they come from.
So
That's my understanding of the sentence.
why did it not read like, one, the patients will be assessed first, then thereafter will be moved, then after they shall have been moved to the receiving institutions or NGOs, they shall be assessed there as well.
It might be the misunderstanding of the person who was taking the minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then the other difficulty that appears there is that why was the word and replace them to the relevant, that is, replace to the relevant facility?
I'm not sure what the replace here means, because I think maybe, I don't know whether he wanted to say and place them to the or transfer them to the relevant if they are not suitable for
Well,
that.
replace means to place again. So the word may be quite appropriate. Assess them and replace them to the relevant facility if there is a need.
It doesn't sound very English. The way it is done.
Nothing wrong with the word. To
Yes.
replace is to place again.
Yes, my understanding will be different, Judge.
Oh, yeah. But in any case, the thrust
fine.
of this,
Yeah.
we must not drown in detail. As you've heard earlier, I'm concerned about this.
Yeah.
We must not drown in detail. This minute of the 8th of April,
Yes,
slam bang in the middle of the move. We can see from the minute, for instance, 950 users must be moved by end of April to identified NGO beds, okay?
yes.
Can you see that? Can you see
Yes,
who's
yeah, the 950 users must be
Yes,
moved by
and yet you still have to do verifications, which must also be done by end of April. Can you see that?
Yes,
So the heft of the question, let's not get drowned in detail. You, for instance, still had to do a credit for training bigger NGOs, and you are the responsible party. Can you see that?
yes.
So what is it that we take from the minute, aside from the detail, is that you have a meeting chaired by the MEC on the 8th of April. Your deadlines are end of April, by which time you would have moved 950 users to NGOs which are yet to be accredited and trained by you, personally by you, and at which a number of things have to be done by that time. Is that correct? Is that a correct understanding of the minute?
Justice, can I explain the training
Yes,
part of
please,
here?
please do.
The training part here, that's why Mr. Musenoche and HOD. You remember when I raised the issue of occupational therapists in Nueva Valley, that they were concerned about their training in terms of, because they were having training sessions at Nueva Valley, the occupational therapists. Those are the academic schools. So what we needed to do, myself and the HOD, we needed to get in contact with the School of Health at VET to discuss with them the possibility of accrediting the bigger NGOs to be able to continue with the training sessions that people were doing in Nueva Valley and other facilities.
But why didn't you do all these things beforehand? You take careers of young people training, placed at Life Esidimeni, you make this drastic decision. You have not even talked to the university or the young people so that their career, their training can go somewhere else.
Yes.
Just like the people who lost their jobs, young people
Were
losing
affected,
training
yeah.
facilities. And on these timelines, on this minute, you have 30 days in which to do all of this. Make sure there are 950 beds, make sure you have this accreditation which you've just explained, and make sure that transport is available to move this and find Mr. Malotana. All of these things, and all users must be placed by 15th June. Can you see how tight that is?
It was really indeed tight, yes.
And disregarding of the interest of others, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Why did you people behave this way? Why was it your word and frankly to hell with the rest? Why was it this way?
Those are the mistakes that happened. Those are issues that have been pointed out.
And 950 users will be placed, and if it is not appropriate, they will be replaced. They will be put at another place. Now, we heard from the Ombudsman about the disruption of changing circumstances of mentally ill patients.
Yes.
Did you have regard to that? The MEC, yourselves, and all these senior people who made these resolutions. To place people now for now, and then move them again if you think so. Was that fair? Was that the right way to do it?
It wasn't.
It was?
It wasn't.
It was not?
Yes.
And why did you do it? And what happened to all these young people who were training, attached to VITS, who were doing their practicals at Life Esidimeni? When you moved all these people, what happened to them?
I did meet myself and we did meet with the head of the school, with the dean. We did meet also with the head of occupational therapy.
Okay, you had a meeting, but what happened to these young people?
We did discuss and we did seek possibilities of accrediting those NGOs, but I think they did find alternative means at our hospitals to continue with the training, at our psych hospitals and also at our normal hospitals.
So in effect, you lost the support and the training skills of these young people to these patients, isn't it? They never went to the NGOs.
Yes.
And that again,
that's what happened. Yes.
Reduced the resources available to the NGOs, isn't it?
Yes.
Counsel?
Thank you. Thank you, Justice Musaneke. I'm not going to belabor that point, Mr. Musaneko. It's been addressed quite sufficiently. Now, let me deal, I think, as the last point, with your evidence that you had recorded your concerns in an email, which happened to be an annexure to the Ombudsman report. Just to close this point. On page, that is the first volume, on page 902, 90.2, I'm sorry, 0.2.
Thank you, Baking.
90.
90.2. 90.2.
Is it first?
The first volume, yes.
First volume. Okay, 90.2.
Yes, 90.2.
Yes.
It's this one. You can use this.
Yeah, it's here.
You did find it.
Is it that is signed by Dr. Madiho?
No. It's annexure how much?
It's annexure 5.
It's annexure 5. I've got it.
Annexure
Thank
5. There you have it, I think. That's annexure 5. Is that the email you're referring to?
Yeah.
That is your email?
Yes.
Okay. And that is the email where you record your concerns about the project?
Yes.
And there's the document dated 12 February, that is on page 90.3. What is that document? It's addressed to MEC.
It's part of the attachment of.
It's an attachment to the email.
I think it was part of the attachment.
And I see at the end there, on page 90.4, it makes reference, recommendation. We respectfully request that the MEC to consider the above mentioned, the above alternative proposal as made by the senior management team tasked with implementation of LE termination project. The proposal has been discussed and shared amongst ourselves as senior managers, i.e. HOD, DDG, and the LE project managers. So all of you, as appears there, as senior managers, were not able to persuade the MEC to stop the project.
Yeah, that's why I had to write this memo directly to her.
And finally, on this point, it is now on record that you have voiced your concerns and made alternative proposals to the MEC, as you record therein, that is in your email as well as the annexure. What occurred of this communication? Did you receive a response from the MEC specifically rejecting your proposals or proposing alternatives to what you had placed on the table?
The only concession that I received was on the issue of, from the MEC, was the issue of Bane.
Bane, yeah.
And also the request that was made either 6 months or a year. The only response was that it's extended for 3 months. Oh. That was the only thing that I got from the MEC. But from the HOD, he requested that I ask for indicative figures from Life Esidimeni in terms of if we go the alternative route, how much will it cost us? I did that, and I did get the indicative figures and shared them with the HOD.
So,
but nothing happened after that. It was never considered as an option.
So, apart from Baneng, which you refer to, you never received, you assume that it was rejected. Your alternative proposals, which affects the entirety of the project, were rejected.
I assume that the alternative was not considered.
Thank you, Justice Msnake. I have nothing further to add on this.
Where is the written response of the MEC to your letter of the 12th February 2016, to your email?
Your Honor, after I tried to trace it when I went for the interview with the Ombudsman, but I could not really. I was not able to trace it. I don't know what happened. I even asked the IT people to come and help me.
What's the written response?
I think she just responded, but I could not trace the actual response.
But what a more definite answer.
Yes.
Because MEC might come here. I want to know, was there a written response?
I did not receive it, but it indicated. The response was there, but it was saying we'll discuss it, because on the top there was a meeting the next day. I think, if I remember well, it indicated that we'll discuss it tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
It was there, but I can't remember the exact words because I couldn't trace it after. I don't know what happened.
I just asked the witness in Setswana language whether there was an answer. And the answer is?
There was an answer, but I can't recall the actual word of the answer.
Okay. Very well. Do you know, you worked in the department for long. Has the department built any facility of its own since 1994?
Justice, I came in 2006. From 2006, the facilities that were opened during the years I've been here is Bekim Langeni and Tellem Khorani.
Where is Bekim Langeni?
Bekim Langeni is in Soweto. It's a district hospital. and tell
And how
them
many beds does it have?
it has, I think, 300 beds. It's a district hospital.
For mentally ill patients?
It is a general hospital.
No, I'm asking hospitals for mentally ill patients.
No, we haven't built
Since
it.
1994, which have we, as the government, the province built?
No, it hasn't built any.
We know Sterkfontein was built before 1994, right?
Yes.
And we know Vescopis was built before 1994.
Yes. And Tara.
We know that Tara and Kalinian was built before 1994.
Yes.
Since 1994, which provincial hospital for mentally ill patients has been built?
They haven't been built. There were no mental health institutions.
Re-examination, Counsel.
Thank you, Justice. There are no questions in re-examination.
Thank you. You asked to make a closing statement. Ramasenoch, this is the opportunity to make that statement.
Mr. Justice, counsels, relatives of the deceased, and my colleagues who are here. From the questions that have been raised, and I've tried to answer as truthfully as I could, I must say that the project that we were involved in was mammoth. It was not going to end in 3 months. It was a short timelines, and I accept that. I have said that I had a foreboding. I engaged with the families. Some of them are here. They were robust in their interaction. I visited Banning on my own. I visited the facilities. I saw how vulnerable the patients were. I tried my best to do what I could. I interacted with you. You shouted at me, but we respected each other. And I tried to say, maybe you need to go to the minister, maybe you need to go to the premier, and also argue there. On my own, I did really, it was a difficult time for me. And on my behalf, I want to apologize to all those who are affected. It was difficult for you. It was also difficult for myself. It was difficult for the team that was there. And I apologize on behalf of myself, on behalf of my colleagues who were in the project team, and on behalf of the Department of Health. But also, I would like to say there were lessons that we learned. The lesson is that as senior public servants, we need all the time to speak truth to power. And that is the lesson that I will carry on in the remaining days of my service to the people. And I will urge my fellow senior managers to be strong and to be assertive and to be able to state their point, because one person sometimes is not heard. But when we are a team and we speak with one voice, it makes a difference. Finally, I would like to appeal to the government, especially to my organization, ANC, that health in Gauteng is a complex organization. It has very responsibilities not only for Gauteng, but for the country. It has tertiary, quaternary services. So any person who needs to be deployed to run that department, either as a head of department or political head, must be a seasoned, experienced health person. It becomes easier when you interact with a health person, because then we can be able to speak the same language. You are able to speak and make a difference to the patients you are interested to. Thank you for giving me the chance to give evidence. I know that you still have to get healing. I myself need to get healing. And all the people who are affected, especially the unit of mental health unit. There's always this issue that there's a dichotomy between political and administrative interface. The administrative people, technocrats, can they be allowed to do their work? And political people give oversight. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judge, for listening to me. I hope with this we have learned our lessons. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Senochi. You are excused, and thank you for your closing remarks, which are appropriate in the circumstances. You are well excused. I was given assurance that there will be EMS people here. I hope they are here to give support to some of us who require intervention at this stage. I'm going to adjourn for a short while we get the the DG for National Health to take the witness stand. I'll adjourn for 10 minutes.
figured, that's fine. Yeah, wait. Can you check if they can cut to Tuka's camera while I cross from this one? They cut between me here and that.
I actually was going to use this one.
We're going to use this one.
It's fine. He's closer and he's got a better view than we'll use that.
But my point being, I can link to here, and then they cut to the shot.
This is what I was organizing.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, hi.
Tell,
Yes. Okay, cool. Can you call me back in a minute? But just ledge with Siki. Call me back in just a few seconds. You'll stand by, send her picture, and go to it.
is that enough? They've latched already. They're gonna cut, but they're gonna cut to. Oh, that's fine then. Bathi singakhulumi nani yazi. Bathi singathethe
Hey, thank you.
in a minute, that's fine. Sting? Is my earphone fine?
Yeah.
My lips?
So you'll just recap his closing statement.
Okay.
Okay, Siki, stand by. Okay, last headline that we're coming to you.
When you were preparing, you were not very all of us got a mail.
On our picture.
It ended in a very emotional ending there, Jeremy. Levi Mosinogi, after a grilling couple of hours that started yesterday, and this one he had asked the Chief Justice if he can have some closing remarks, and he offered a very heartfelt apology, Jeremy. You could see that he was emotional and saying that he knows these families. He had engaged with them in different platforms, saying that from the heated meetings they'd had in the beginning to actually at some point telling some of them that to encouraging them to approach authorities like the minister or the MEC, and saying that he offers his heartfelt apology for what had happened. They could have done things differently, and that really hit home, Jeremy. There was such a heavy feeling in this room today, and it's amazing in the sense that it's still day 3, but the emotion was so raw for the families here, and some of them started crying. And he actually also urged his organization, saying that he's a member of the African National Congress and is urging his party, especially in Gauteng, that the health system in this province is quite complex. And the next time they want to hire someone to lead this department, it needs to be someone with expertise, someone who's seasoned in the health sector, so that such tragedies can be prevented. And this was one of the complaints even last year, Jeremy, from some of the families, that Gledani Mahlangu is not qualified to lead, saying that she's a teacher. How can a teacher lead the health department? So that came out again from a health official, saying that it's important to have people qualified to lead these departments, but very emotional, Jeremy. But again, he's laid the foundation of painting the picture of the kind of
decision-making that was behind this process, and it's safe to say that it really was not a well-thought-out plan. I've actually started, as I'm listening here, it's day 3, I've actually started a count of the times the chairperson keeps asking that question, Jeremy. He's been, the former Deputy Chief Justice, Mseneke, has been asking that question, why, since Monday. And it's a question, even the families, when sometimes during the testimony, the families would ask, but why? As it gives explanations or tells us some of the things that have unfolded. That's the key question, Jeremy. Exactly why, with those tight deadlines, did they forge ahead with this plan when it was clear on all fronts that, and the ripple effects as well, it's not just these families, Jeremy, that were
a column headed status, can you then proceed to elaborate of what was done by the government in response to the recommendation?
If I just respond in relation to this, on the right column, it says the Gauteng Mental Health Marathon Project has been stopped as part of this aspect. A decision was taken that all live Esidimeni patients had to be transferred from the NGOs to suitable facilities.
And that was in compliance with what the Ombudsman has recommended.
Yes, it was in line with what was recommended by the Ombudsman.
Thank you. It appears that it's going to be a tedious task because the people in attendance are eagerly waiting to get information of what has the government done in response to the incidents that has occurred, and therefore we will have to go through each and every recommendation so that it can be known to all what is it that has been done. And if we can move to recommendation number 2, the Premier of Gauteng Province must, in light of the findings herein, consider the suitability of MEC Gedani Dorothy Mahlangu to continue in her current role as MEC for Health. What has been the steps taken in relation to that recommendation?
Well, as you may know, because this was also made public, that the MEC actually voluntarily resigned. So it happened.
As you do so, can you please just read it for the record so that it can be known of the details of exactly what has been done in the implementation of the recommendations?
It says former MEC Mahlangu voluntarily resigned her position on the 31st of January 2017, and MEC Gwen Ramokgopa was sworn in on the 6th of February 2017 as the new MEC for Health in Gauteng.
And then let's go to recommendation number 3, which records that disciplinary proceedings must be instituted against Dr. Tiego Ephraim Selebano for gross misconduct and or incompetence in compliance with the disciplinary code and procedures applicable to SMS members in the public service. In light of Dr. Selebano's conduct during the course of the investigation, which includes tampering with evidence, it is recommended that the Premier should consider suspending him pending his disciplinary hearing, subject to compliance with disciplinary code and procedure applicable to SMS members in the public service. What has been the government's response in the implementation of the recommendation?
The disciplinary process has commenced against the head of department, Dr. Selebano, who is on suspension since the 8th of February 2017. However, the disciplinary process against Dr. Selebano was postponed pending the outcome of the appeal. So the Minister of Health appointed an appeal, a tribunal, which is chaired by Judge Mwepe, and the hearing is scheduled to take place in October.
So you confirm that this has indeed been attended to?
Yes.
Let's then proceed to recommendation number 4. Disciplinary proceedings must be instituted against Dr. Makhabu Manamela for gross misconduct and or incompetence in compliance with the disciplinary code. And if you turn over the page, procedure applicable to SMS members in the public service. In light of Dr. Makhabu Manamela's conduct during the course of the investigation, which includes tampering with evidence, it is recommended that consideration be given to suspending her pending her disciplinary hearing, subject to compliance with the disciplinary code and procedure applicable to SMS members in the public service. Can you then deal with the implementation in relation to that recommendation?
Dr. Manamela has been suspended since the 8th of February 2017. The disciplinary process against her has been postponed pending the outcome of her appeal, and the appeal has been scheduled for the month of October. It is the same tribunal that the minister has established that is chaired by Judge Mwepe.
Thank you. Let's then proceed to recommendation number 5. The findings against Doctors M. Manamela and T.E. Silebano must be reported to their respective professional bodies for appropriate remedial action with regard professional and ethical conduct. What steps were taken in relation to that recommendation?
Once the disciplinary cases have been finalized, the professional bodies responsible, which is the Health Professions Council and the Nursing Council, will be appropriately informed, and both officials will be reported to those bodies.
And you have already alluded to the fact that these 2 doctors have already been subjected to those processes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Recommendation number 6 records that corrective disciplinary action must be taken against members of the GDOMH, namely Ms. S. Mashile.
Counsel, for the record, let's avoid acronyms. This record will be read far and wide, and many people interested in medical ethics and so on. So just use the full ones and not acronyms, please.
Indeed so, Justice.
Thank you.
If I can just repeat for clarity, recommendation number 6 provides that corrective disciplinary action must be taken against members of the Gauteng of the Gauteng Department of Mental Health, namely S. Mashile, who is the Deputy Director, Mr. F. Tobani, also Deputy Director, Ms. H. Jacobus, Deputy Director, Ms. S. Senelo, Deputy Director, Dr. S. Lenkwani, Deputy Director, Mr. M. Pitzi, Chief Director, Ms. D. Masondo, Chair of the Mental Health Review Board, Ms. M. Nyatlo, Chief Executive Officer of the Cullinan Care Rehabilitation Center, Ms. M. Malaza, Acting Chief Executive Officer of the Cullinan Care Rehabilitation Center, in compliance with the disciplinary code and procedures applicable to them for failing to exercise their fiduciary duties and responsibilities. They allowed fear to cloud and override their fiduciary responsibilities and thus failed to report this matter earlier to relevant authorities. Fiduciary responsibility is essential for good corporate governance. May you please proceed to tell the world what the government of South Africa has done in response to this.
Ms. D. Masondo, who is the chair of the Mental Health Review Board, has been removed from her position. An attorney has been appointed to lead evidence in a disciplinary inquiry against all the named public service officials. An advocate has been appointed to preside over these inquiries. In 4 of the 6 cases that are proceeding, the mental health care deputy directors pleaded guilty, and the presiding officer has pronounced a sanction of final written warning as well as counseling on all 4 officials. The presiding officer's report is still awaited for the cases against the remaining 2 deputy directors who also pleaded guilty. The case against Chief Director of Tshwane Health District, Mr. Pitsi, was stalled while awaiting the outcome of his appeal against the findings of the Health Ombudsman, which has been referred by the Minister to the Minister of Health to the tribunal. Mr. Pitsi has been transferred to Ekurhuleni Health District Office, and his appeal has been heard. We're awaiting the outcome. He's one of those whose appeal has already been heard.
So you do confirm that indeed this recommendation has been implemented?
Yes.
Let's then proceed to recommendation number 7. All the remedial actions recommended above must be instituted within 45 days and progress be reported to the Chief Executive Officer of the Office of the Health Standards Compliance within 90 days. Can you proceed to give an indication in relation to this recommendation?
A steering committee was appointed by the Premier and the Minister and is co-chaired by myself and the DG in the Office of the Premier, as well as the Acting Head of Department of Gauteng Department of Health. The steering committee is also made up of officials from other government departments, South African Police Services, National Treasury, Department of Social Development, SASSA, and Department of Justice. I must say that the 90 days was very tight, and we had to write the Ombudsman to explain that we do not want to repeat the same mistakes that happened when this project came about. And we requested an extension because 90 days was not a reasonable period within which to implement this recommendation.
Was the extension granted?
Yes, it was granted.
Thank you. Can you just clarify?
To which period?
What we did...
But still another 30 days, 90 days, 100 days?
We
or a fixed
extended
date?
that to end of May.
End of May?
Yes.
Okay.
End of May of which year?
Of 2017.
Then can you just clarify with whom have you been involved in the implementation of the recommendations from the Office of the Ombudsman?
On the first, when the Ombudsman released the report, before we could start with the implementation of the recommendations, we actually wanted to go to the facilities ourselves and see what the state of affairs was. The 2nd of February, myself and the DG of the province visited Cardinal, because this is the first facility where we got the report, personally where I got the report from the Deputy Director General. But also because even when the report was released, there were 2 family members that expressed serious concerns that they want their family members removed immediately. So on the 2nd, we visited a number of facilities, Cardinal, Kalafong. We also went to Precious Angels because we wanted to also verify that those 2 facilities were closed. In total, in a period of a week, we had visited a total of 9 facilities between myself and the DG in the Office of the Premier. But what we also did on the 3rd, we invited all stakeholders. We invited civil society.
If I can just interrupt, like you have just referred to the DG in the Office of the Premier. Can you just refer to her, to that DG by name? Who is that DG that you are referring to?
It's DG Pindibaleni. Pindibaleni.
Sorry for the interruption. You may proceed.
So we invited experts, we invited civil society, we invited various stakeholders to first listen to them as to what is it they had concerned about with regard to this project when it was executed, so that we could not repeat the same mistakes that were made by Gauteng Department of Health. But in particular, we also requested the minister to appoint 60 experts from various multidisciplinary teams. The reason being that, again, we did not want this project executed by people who did not have appropriate skills.
And the project was to do what? To reintegrate the patients?
The project was multifold. Firstly, it was intended to identify those patients that were most at risk so that we could reduce the problems, particularly with the deaths that were reported. And if you read the report of the Ombudsman, he already said the number is 94 and still counting. And we wanted to arrest that as soon as possible.
Let's then proceed to recommendation number 8. The Ombudsman fully supports the ongoing South African Police Service and forensic investigations underway. The findings and outcome of these investigations must be shared with appropriate agencies so that appropriate action, where deemed justified, can be taken. What has been the response towards the implementation of this recommendation?
Firstly, the South African Police Services was invited to a steering committee that DG Pindibaleni has established in the Office of the Premier. And there's been subsequent meetings. The initial meeting could not take place, but I just wanted to mention, Justice, if you allow me, at the time when we started, there was also a family meeting convened. And in the family meeting, we got to hear about some family members who still could not locate their loved ones. Some family members who still did not know where some members of their families were. But there were also some family members who expressed concerns about how far they had to travel to go and identify their loved ones. So what we then did was to put together a team to go from mortuary to mortuary, identifying some of the members of the families, so that at least we could ensure that we had everybody who was on the list. But we also went back and wrote every single hospital to just tell us who were all the people who were admitted in our provincial health hospitals. Now, these are hospitals, they are not necessarily psychiatric hospitals. But we also went to get the list from the psychiatric hospitals so that we can assure ourselves where exactly everybody was, so that we were not just informed that they were with NGOs when they were not. So we wanted to verify every single fact.
Yes. Proceed.
But because the Ombudsman had raised the question of data as a concern, we established a data work stream with the assistance of the Statistician General. He identified people to help us at least ensure that we could verify the data. We requested the original database from Life Esidimeni, so that in that database we could account from every single person. And in this exercise that we're involved in, we actually identified that in that database there were duplicates. And I would like to use an example. I said my name is Malibona Precious Matsuso. In that database, they would have Malibona Matsuso as one person, Precious Matsuso as another person, Precious Malibona as another person. So you'd get one person reported 4 times. So we went through every single list, every single name, just to ensure that we could account from every person, because this is what was also making it difficult for family members to know exactly where their members were.
You can then proceed in relation to the steps taken.
So the DG in the Office of the Premier met with the Provincial Commissioner, General Dilange, and his team, and they were involved with ensuring that the Health Ombudsman recommendations are implemented. So there's a team of 8 investigators who are supposed to help us with the inquest, because one of the problems that one family member raised was that she wanted an inquest conducted and she was not getting assistance in this regard. So the DG has also met with the deputy the DPP in Pretoria. It's what the Johannesburg advocate Andrew Chauke, who referred the matter also to the prosecuting office, and the South African Police Services and NPA have currently.
You have just referred to DPP. Like, will that be the Director of Public Prosecutions?
Yes, the public prosecutions, but also the NPA. So they are working with the NPA and South African Police Services, and they've currently opened 35 docket cases. And of these 35 docket cases, about 26 postmortems have already been conducted.
And then what is happening with the remainder?
I think we still have...
Of the 35 cases that you have just mentioned of?
So far, we've just done the 26 post-mortems. So what we've done, we actually went from mortuary to mortuary, like I was explaining. We also went as far as Limpopo, because we're told 2 of the life Esidimeni patients, because we wanted to get records. But we identified some members that had been given pauper's funeral. And we went back to get their details so that we could accordingly have them identified. So we've taken the data, went back to Department of Home Affairs, but the details of this, the DG in the Office of the Premier, Ms. Pindi Baleni, will be able to give further details.
But in the response to recommendation 8, there's reference to post-mortem reports. Is that accurate? Shouldn't that read inquest reports? Are those post-mortem reports?
These are forensic pathology reports.
Yes, which means post-mortem reports.
Yes. You're just...
Let them just clear it in my own head. 118 people we know now have, at least 118 have died. Are they all buried?
Yes, some were buried by their own family members.
But in the verification task team, did you find that all 118 have been buried? The 118 which the Ombudsman gave to us?
No, 7 of them. In this investigation that we're doing, going from mortuary to mortuary, there were still 7 that had not been accounted for by family members.
But who were known to have died within the marathon project?
Yes, it was our understanding.
You see, post-mortem reports have a finite time within which they can be made, i.e. before burial. So what is this telling us? It's telling us that 26, in other words, SAPS and NPA have currently opened 35 docket cases. Of these 35 cases, 26 have been have finalized post-mortem reports. What does it tell us about the balance? Are post-mortem still to be made? For instance, of the 9, I'm just trying to understand what you're conveying there. The difference between 35 and 26 is 9.
Yes.
What does it mean? It means there have been pathological examinations where the reports have not been written out, or it means the corpses are still available and will be subjected to post-mortem examination.
Yes, it's a matter that I'll verify with DG Baleni.
Yeah.
Because it's
what that means, eh?
Yes, precisely because it's a process that has been largely driven by Gauteng.
Yeah, we can come back to that sometime, because it seems to me it's going to also be helpful to know whether you managed to have post-mortems done in all instances. Probably not, if you had pauper's funerals, which raises difficult questions around exhumation and so on. But I don't want to keep you now. We can get to the details some other time. You can go on to 9, I think.
Thank you. Recommendation number 9 is that the National Minister of Health should request the South African Human Rights Commission to undertake a systematic and systemic review of human rights compliance and possible violations nationally relating to mental health. What has been the steps taken to meet the recommendations of the Ombudsman?
The Minister wrote the letter to the South African Human Rights Commission. They have sent questions to all of us to respond to. And there is a planned hearing that I think was postponed. We don't have a new date of the hearing that the South African Human Rights Council is, but the investigations have started.
There was an article in the media this morning which might be totally mischievous, which I'm putting it to you, to get it on record. They say the head of the South African Human Rights Commission was said to have said he will do the investigation, but he has no money to do it. Do you know anything about that?
Well,
if you don't, it's speculation and nothing more than that. If you know, of course, you are at liberty to respond.
Justice, I don't know about it, but what I know is that he wrote us. We've provided information, and we're supposed to have public hearings, and we haven't been given a date.
I see. Very well.
Okay, thank you. Let's proceed to recommendation number 10. Appropriate legal proceedings should be instituted or administrative action taken against the NGOs that were found to have been operating unlawfully and where mental health care users have died.
The Minister and the Premier signed a letter requesting the President to issue a proclamation so that the SIU can conduct investigations into the affairs of Gauteng Department of Health and the NGOs for any possible impropriety. The SIU has commenced its investigations. They've also started interviews. Some of my officials have been invited for these, for questioning and so on. So this work has begun. Appropriate legal proceedings have to be taken. What has happened, some NGOs challenged the process, they appealed, and as part of that appeal, the hearing will be soon, and we will hear of the outcome. But the letter has been issued to all the NGOs that operated or have been operating unlawfully or without proper licenses to cease activities with immediate effect. This letter was giving the NGOs an option of making a representation. In compliance with the principle of fairness, we had to allow them to also warn them that will be, particularly the Gauteng Department of Health, being responsible for issuing those licenses. The letter mainly provides for very strict time frames that those NGOs were supposed to make a representation. And based on this, once Gauteng Department of Health and acting HOD receives these representations, you are supposed to ensure that, firstly, letter ordering them to cease operations was issued, and that letter provided opportunity for them to say who was the decision maker. But also, if there was a refusal, there must be reasons why. The second step was application to court to set aside the licenses that were issued by head of department, so that all those licenses, particularly those that were unlawful, will cease immediately, and that in the event they refused, that the South African police would be invited, and the state attorney would have to apply for an urgent interdict, particularly those NGOs that we think were putting people at risk.
Thank you. You have just mentioned that the the President was to issue a proclamation for an investigation. A proclamation which is a public document. I do have a copy of that proclamation. Copies will be made available for these proceedings, and copies will be handed up at a later stage, but it is proclamation number R23 of 2017 by the President of the Republic of South Africa for Special Investigation Units and Special Tribunals Act, referral of matters to existing special investigation. And it is in relation to it provides that I hereby, under Section 2, subsection 1 of the Act, refer the matters mentioned in the schedule in respect of the Department for Investigation to the Special Investigating Unit established by the proclamation. And in that regard, I'll just go straight to the schedule which deals with those matters which are being referred for investigation. Under the heading schedule, it is recorded that the procurement of or contracting by or on behalf of the department of the service from 28 entities in whose mental health care users were entrusted and payments made in respect thereof in a manner that was, subparagraph A, not fair, competitive, transparent, equitable, or cost-effective. Subparagraph B, contrary to applicable, subparagraph Roman figure 1, legislation, manuals, guidelines, practice notes, circulars or instructions issued by the National Treasury or the relevant provincial treasury. And then it goes further to provide that in relation to manuals, policies, procedures, prescripts, instructions or practices or of or applicable to the department. And then subparagraph C, conducted by or facilitated through the improper or unlawful conduct, Roman figure 1, officials of the department, or Roman figure 2, any other person or entity, to corruptly or unduly benefit themselves or others, or subparagraph D, fraudulently, and related unauthorized, irregular, or fruitless and wasteful expenditure incurred by the department or the state. This, as a public document, we have not had the opportunity to make copies. Such copies will be made to for the record in these proceedings, and it will be handed up at the adjournment.
Well, that's fine. We can hand it up tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
By then, I would have worked out a schedule of all of the documents handed up. I think they will probably be called EL1, EL2, EL3. But we'll work that out and hand that. When we hand that up, it will have a number as we hand it up tomorrow.
Thank you, Justice.
But very well. Shall we proceed then?
Ms. Matsoso, if we may proceed to recommendation number 11. Mr. Justice Musanage, may I just inquire, as I've indicated that this will appear to be a tedious task, the witness will have to give detail of the steps taken in relation to each and every recommendation.
Yes.
It appears to be late in the day. I just wanted to get direction if we may proceed, or will it be an appropriate time to take a break so that people can be refreshed when we resume tomorrow?
Yes, Counsel, It's a fine way of saying we must adjourn. And I'm not entirely opposed to that. That would mean, DG, that you are required here tomorrow at 9:30 to continue with the process. All I can say, Counsel, is that we know that the DG must tell us the recommendations. We are aware of the responses, so we could allow her to run through the responses without much interruption, because we know what the recommendations are. So if we allow her to do that tomorrow morning, then we can get down to some cross-examination. But we've done well, and understand the need to put it down all publicly out there. I think it's important. So I'm with you there. But yes, we are going to adjourn in a short while. And immediately after, I think I would like to have a short meeting with Counsel before we all move out to our different directions. So if we could, immediately after the adjournment, meet in my office, I almost call it chambers. And then there we could, there's one matter I would like to raise very quickly, which is uncontentious, but which requires our collective attention. DG, you, as I say, you're excused, and we're certainly going to see you tomorrow morning. I was trying to help you away, but your counsel wants you back here. Very well, we are gentle tomorrow, 9:30.
The chair. I can't even stand up.
Sorry.